D table looks now. Australia with their first points, all three today. They are behind the champions France. Of course, France will play Denmark at 4 o'clock this afternoon. They had to absorb a huge amount of pressure in that second half, but they did.
Yeah, they did, and for the majority of the half, Claire, they looked comfortable, almost a conscious decision. They got to a point in that second half where we'd sit deep, low defensive block, and we trust ourselves to be able to keep the Tunisians out. Two centre-halves, Rolls and Souttar in particular, exceptional. Ryan was very competent in behind them. So, yeah, they huffed and puffed. Tunisia did what they could. I'll give them some credit for that. Good decision by the manager, tactical change at half-time. Sassy came on in midfield, getting an extra player in there, so they got an element of control to the game. Tunisia for second half, which they didn't have in the first. As I said, pushed, made a couple of opportunities, did as much as they could, but I always felt Australia were still to a certain extent in their comfort zone, and were happy to defend that deep. And ultimately, over the course of the 90 minutes, I thought they probably just deserved the win.
Yeah, huge win for them. Those 3 points have really put them into contention in Group D.
Well, it's huge now. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens later on between France and Denmark, because going into the last game, Australia with 3 points on the board. Denmark, there's a potential they could be only on 1, and that just makes that game fascinating. But what a huge win for them, absolutely massive. Like going up against the world champions in the first game, they were up against a formidable side, but today they really stuck at it. And before the game, Kenny and I were talking about Tunisia and how that they were going to be so aggressive and pressing so high and cause them problems, but Australia matched them step for step. The physicality in the middle of the park, they didn't back out tackles, they won so much stuff. And then in those moments where they needed a little bit of quality, someone to be a calming influence, they had that in our Mooy, who I think was exceptional throughout the game as well. You add him to the 2 centre-backs all over. Wonderful performance for them, and it puts them in a fantastic position going into the last game in the group.
Yeah, and you had highlighted, we were talking about the energy of the Tunisians beforehand. You fancied them to come through from this, but the energy, the quality, the finishing quality just wasn't there.
No, it wasn't there. That was always the small criticism. They don't look like a team have a huge amount of goals in them. Haven't got a prolific goal scorer. Jebeli I like in terms of his attitude up front. Really kind of busy player. High work rate from him. But in terms of a forward player with a kind of clinical edge, no, they hadn't got one. I didn't even think a huge amount of creativity even in that central midfield area, as opposed to Australia who had Mooy in there, Mooy pulling the strings, Landani and Skiri in centre midfield. Tidy enough footballers, but no real imagination to their play. I just felt the game was won in that first 25 minutes. Australia started well, stamped their authority on the game, and Mooy controlled the game in that period of time. And ultimately, it was the team that was going to get that first goal potentially was going to win the game. Never suspected there was going to be a lot of goals in the game, did we? So
no, I didn't think it was going to be a glut, but you just feel that Tunisia are just a bit. You don't want to take away from them their energy and their passion and the way they went about their business in their first game, but they were just too overzealous. They were overrunning things, and sometimes that can take over. And you mentioned that at the start of the game, that you have to have that fight, but you have to be calm in a possession. They didn't show that.
Second half,
you have to give them a big, massive improvement in the second half from the way they played. But that was also in turn to Australia kind of sitting back a little bit and trying to catch them on the counter.
But they've got France to come now, so you imagine it's the end of the road for them.
Yeah, the only going into that game, you feel, if France have comfortably come out of group and if they're 6 points after a win tonight, maybe it gives them a chance. But even if you feel France were to play a weak inside, they'd be way too strong for them, you'd think.
Yeah, and the Aussies, their first World Cup win since 2010 in South Africa. Do you fancy them now against the Danes?
I do. Yeah, I really do, because I don't think physically, I think they're a match for anybody. They showed that today. They can look after themselves in all areas of the pitch. That's very Australian-like, no surprise there. And I think they have a bit of a cutting edge up front. Duke impressed me today, first half. Lecky, good one as well on the left-hand side, impressive operator. And Mooy, of course, the orchestrator in that central midfield area. So, yeah, off the back of Denmark's first performance in the group, which was pretty awful, really. I'm sure there'll be an improvement in their performance, but yeah, they'll fancy their chances now.
That is today's goal scorer, Mitchell Duke. Lovely header from him in the 23rd minute, and a huge boost for them now, isn't it? Like, they seem to be a group that's got a good spirit. Yeah, amazing. To be honest, that's brilliant to watch, isn't it? Like, it just goes to show that, and all the external factors are around this World Cup, that when it comes down to on the pitch, that how much it means. It really is the pinnacle to be at, and to score a goal at a World Cup, like, it's just complete. You can see his overall emotion. He can't contain it. You can't have Australian blokes crying on the side of the pitch. No, I know. But it just shows you how much it means to these players. Like, you've been to one, Kenny.
It's an amazing achievement, and for these guys to get a win, which they haven't done for a long time.
I know, it's so rare for the Aussies to get a win.
It's not just that, it actually meant something, the result. They must feel as if now, I wouldn't say maybe within touching distance, but a realistic opportunity of actually qualifying out of the group into the knockout stage. That's huge.
Yeah, it really is on the table for them now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Like I said, they'll fancy their chances. Don't get me wrong, Denmark are street smart, and you would expect some improvement from them. Be dependent, will a draw be good enough in the final game against Denmark? We'll wait and see. That'll be a big consideration, but yeah, they're certainly up. There's no doubt about that. One win, it's amazing. You know, the whole mindset changes.
No doubt they will enjoy the celebrations back in Australia. Very happy. Graham Arnold there describing the match against the world champions as a friendly, but they're full of hope now and bouncing, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. You'll get a sense that the dressing room will be a good place to be after the game. You know, everybody will be up. But yeah, you have to temper that to a certain extent. But I think as well, you have to enjoy the moment on top of that as well. I think that's important.
They don't come around that often, do they? That's the thing.
Yeah. I think sometimes players, you don't appreciate that. You're a bit conscious of the fact you want to come in, you don't you don't overdo it and stuff, over-celebrate, you know what I mean? But you maybe overthink it, just kind of live in the moment a little bit, but very quickly refocus after.
OK, well, let's look back at the game now. Tunisia did have a host of chances in that second half.
Yeah, not clear-cut chances though, Claire. It was a lot better, a lot more controlled, got into these areas a lot more sustained pressure. Their captain was heavily involved, Saki walking off the left-hand side. We can see that defensive block from Australia making things difficult. This is a tough shot, tough angle. Has to go across the goalkeeper to score there. It's not easy. Again, the Australian players, showing them across the pitch, not making it easy for them. That's a 25-yard shot heading in the opposite direction. Kind of hopeful ball into the box. Don't win the initial header, trying to improvise. So they're kind of scratching around a little bit, Claire. You know, they're throwing players forward. This is a shot, hopeful shot from distance. I just felt the Australian defensive structure stood up really well. Again, plenty of bodies there between Kazri and the goal. Could have made a better connection. You could argue again that clinical edge to their finishing. But I'll give them credit second half, Tunisia. They picked themselves up. They found a little solution in terms of the problems they had first half, and they gave as good as they could.
We did speak about that lack of quality up front for Tunisia. Did you ever feel like they were really going to make that breakthrough?
Yeah, there was a one pullback where Kazri gets a shot away. It was the only chance they really got behind. Everything else was like a forced rush shot or crossing distance, and crossing into the box against the likes of Souttar and Rels, they were going to eat them up. So they were never really posing a physical threat in there. So it was the lack of creativity in around them to pull Australia apart. But you've got to give Australia credit. They stepped back. Mooy in front helped out as well. Defensively, they were solid, and they restricted them to like timid efforts from distance that the keeper was comfortable with.
Yeah, huge defensive effort. We're going to highlight now the Stoke player, Harry Souttar. He was really immense, wasn't he? Yeah,
and you look at this guy had an ACL last November, and he's back in the Australian team. I think he made his debut in 2019, and this is an absolutely sensational block. He's got 11 caps. His brother plays for Scotland and plays for Rangers, so he probably could have gone down that road, but committed to Australia, and this just shows the recovery run he makes here. Comes across like there's no pulling out. Fantastic block, and in this position, just gets himself out a little bit. Instead of stand back, just steps out of the line, puts himself in between the man and the ball. But it wasn't just these blocks and tackles, it was throughout the game, moments like this as well, where he was able to get across his man, recover one, and then calmness to play back to the goalkeeper. I thought his all-round performance was fantastic. And like I said, for a player who's been kind of starved of football for a long time, Australia brought him into the team, and he's got 6 goals for them as well. So he's a real goal threat in the forward areas, and someone that they really want to play. But an ACL has kept him out for a long time, and he's back now, and I think he's going to be hugely important, and I showed no signs of it there in the tackles he made. Yeah, and calm is a word we've used a couple of times about the Australians.
Yeah, it was calm defending. You have to be calm in your defending. You have to. The best defenders are good decision makers. It actually reminded me a little bit. I was looking at that Richard Dunn type performance in an Ireland jersey. Just in terms of physically how he is, a big man, isn't he? Kind of big shoulders, dominant in the air, physically imposing himself. Immaculate kind of tackling. That kind of Superman performance today. He'll be delighted with his individual performance.
Now, we didn't get any goal in that second half, so let's have a look back at the only goal of the game. It came in the 23rd minute. Really nice header.
Oh, it was a cracking goal. Talking about Australia going from back to front. Now, this is back to front, but this is really accurate. That ball out from Harry Souttar is a squiz. We talk about is the defensive qualities. That was really good technique, just fizzing that ball into Duke's feet. little bit of luck at the end of it, but I just thought it was a brilliant goal. Have a look at Duke here dropping off. Look at that first touch around the corner to McRae. That's absolutely fantastic. But keep an eye on him. He actually drives on the outside shoulder of Mariah initially, so he can't see him. Then just leans on the inside. And this improvisation here, Stephen mentioned it earlier, is absolutely fantastic. He knows all the paces on the ball. He's just got to flick it directly into that far corner of the net. It's a brilliant header.
Yeah, great goal. And just to highlight another sort of impressive player, Aaron Mooy, Celtic man again, another Scottish connection. He really impressed you today.
Yeah, we spoke to him before the game, how he's so important for them. He just keeps them ticking over. He's always, like I said, that calmness in the ball, passing it. But he offers a defensive solidity as well. Like I said, he's not the quickest player, but he does get around the pitch well, always picks up great positions. And it's just when he gets on the ball, he's never rushed. He always seems to pick the right pass. He rarely forces it. And he's just always in position. Even this around the corner here, he's so clever in what he does, and he's always been a very good technical player, and as someone that Australia lean on heavily. And that was the difference in the first half, I think, for most of the game, is that when Australia were in possession, he was able to be that calm and influence, put his foot in the ball, pick a simple pass and then drive them forward. But defensively he was excellent, I think, putting blocks in as well. And there was this moment in the game as well where he gets out, closes it down, and later on there's an incident where he steps in, wins the ball back, and then instead of just thinking, right, it's in the game, I want to smash it forward, keeps possession, a little pass inside. You know, it's those moments, and then he could have topped it all off. It was, you know, a decent effort from out of the edge of the box, half volley. But I think his all-round game was brilliant today, and someone that in the next round, especially when you look at Denmark and their midfield and what they can do, he'd be hugely important.
If you look at all his passes, they're not too many 40-yard like diagonal defence splitting passes, just simple 5, 10, 15 yards, 1-2 touch. Nobody can kind of get near them. Just keeping things ticking over, just lending the ball to other people and getting his teammates in the game while keeping that defensive discipline behind the ball.
One of the most important things about a player like that is when you win the ball back, it's having someone that then finds your shirt or the jersey, because so often that you win a ball back, in Tunisia did in the first half, they'd win it back but then they just give it away straight away, whereas when he was in possession he'd always find an Australian shirt, and that just allowed them to build momentum, and I think that's huge.
Not a lot of chances for Australia second half, but Lecky maybe should have made it 2-0.
Yeah, me and Stephen are a little bit of odds on this. I think Stephen's right in terms of if he actually this is the original one. I think the two Australian players in the box were actually looking for more of a cutback there. This is the one we're talking about, Lecky at the top of the picture. If he'd really sprinted as hard as he could early on, I think he gets himself a tap in there, just like grazed off his studs. And of course, if that had an nestled top corner, that would have just been the cheese on top for Mooy. But yeah, didn't have a huge amount of chances, but like I said, didn't go chasing that second goal second half, did he? He just felt as if, come on to us, we're actually happy. You get a bit of confidence sometimes in your defensive block. You can feel out a team clear over kind of 40, 50, 60 minutes. You get confident, you think, you know what, they can't get through us here. Just keep our concentration. We're going to be fine. If the second goal comes in the counter-attack, oh, well and good. If not, we're going to keep this clean sheet. You got a sense of that today. Yeah.
And also positive for Australia, Hurstich, who was a real star of their qualifying campaign, he came on and got some game time because he has been injured. Yeah,
important to get him minutes on the pitch. And the thing is that Australia put in a huge effort, so they have to change the game up. But he is someone that him and Mooy have actually linked really well together in the past. Attack-minded midfield player who then is that next step up. Mooy is often the one that starts to play. He's the one that continues it on. So for them to get some minutes in his legs was really important for him today.
Yeah, so 3 points on the Group D table for Australia. So how are you assessing it now? Obviously, we've got France-Denmark coming up at 4 o'clock. Who's coming out of this? We're saying France are coming out, obviously, but who's joining them?
Yeah, we're saying we're going to make it. We're going to say France are going to beat Denmark today. That's not an absolute given, is it? But there is a possibility of that. France will win the group. Then it all comes down to that final game between Australia and Denmark. Look, Denmark have quality to an extent, although they're hugely disappointed in that opening game. So you'd like to think they're big players. Stephen talks about Mooy for Australia, that creative edge. Well, no better man than Christian Eriksen when the chips are down to get on the ball and make those decisive moments for Denmark. So I think it's pretty much of a toss-up, to be honest with you, in terms of Denmark and Australia going into that last game.
Stephen, what do you think?
I think Denmark are going to have a much better showing today against France. I think they're going to drastically have to up it. Maybe they went into the first game a little bit naive, feeling they could kind of coast through it and win it. Not that's something I've ever seen the Danish teams really do, but you know, against France, they know they have to work hard. They're going to have to really raise the game. So if they can put a performance in there, see what happens. In France, you know, on their day, they're capable of beating anybody. But I think going into the last game, the fact that it's going to be Denmark against Australia just makes this group brilliant to watch.
I think if Australia just need a draw in that final game against Denmark, I think you give them the edge, wouldn't you? Against Denmark.
Slightly, yeah.
Yeah, just ever so slightly, yeah.
Okay.